What's up, everybody? Welcome into another episode of the OBR Prospect Spotlight here on the OBR Streaming Network. Please make sure you hit that subscribe, give us a thumbs up, hit that bell so you know every time we go live. Um, my name is Jacob. I'm your host here today. Joining me in my co-host seat this week, Mr. Randall Slifer. How you doing, buddy?
Hey, I'm good. How you doing today?
I'm doing all right. We're recording this on a Friday, so it's about the weekend. So,
Yeah.
so we're pre-recorded as always, guys. So, I will try to be as active as I can in the chat to answer questions, whatnot. But we are pre-recording this because I do work second shift, and in that just kind of screws all those things up. So, if you haven't checked it out, this is the third summer scouting podcast. A couple of weeks ago, Bill Sparks joined me. We talked about offensive tackles last week. Anthony Russo joined me. We talked about wide receivers. So if you haven't checked those episodes out, go check those out. We're going to continue rolling through summer scouting. We're going to start with edge players today. So one thing I wanted to point out that I think is very interesting about this is I was thinking about this, Randall, beforehand, and I would love to get your opinion on this. So when I'm scouting, one thing I have to fight is a Browns bias. And what I mean by that is I cover the Browns and and I'm a fan of the Browns. And sometimes I think I move players up my board based on Browns needs or that they fit the archetype of a Browns player. Like even with edge, I saw myself doing it a little bit. They really like opposite Myles Garrett, those big, powerful run stuffing, edge setting edges. We've seen them, Alex Wright, Isaiah. We've seen them draft them and develop them and bring them in and things like that. And so I'm wondering, that's what I like about trying to bring in other draft analysts that don't cover the Browns to be like, hey, am I being a little bit like, do you feel that way yourself with like maybe sometimes the way you move things around, there's some bias based on your favorite team or something like that?
Oh, 100%. Especially because Buffalo, they're both outside edges as compression pass rushers. So compress the pocket, let the inside do the work sort of thing. So like I was fully biased in Landon Jackson living in Arkansas and having him as an opportunity. So I'm super glad that it went through. But everybody had a like late second, third round grade on him, and I had an early second grade on him, and I couldn't get out of it. Like I just could not let my brain fix it. So I just kept it there. So it was what it was. And he ended up going in the third round, rightfully so. But Buffalo still took him. So it's definitely hard. But there's so many archetypes when it comes to edge rushers that it's just like who goes where and what their styles are is so intriguing to where there's just different pockets of edge rushers, and I love that.
Yeah, I definitely think edge, and even more so to nowadays because I think you see so many of these big edges that also can flex inside and play some tackle. I mean, I just mentioned Alex Wright with the Browns. I think as a pass rusher, Alex Wright in his first couple of years had the unfortunate tricep injury last year, but his best pass rushing snaps I think have come from defensive tackle, from like 3 tech and 5 tech, and like moving some inside more so than outside in the wide nine. So I'm with you 100. I'm just so intrigued by edge rushers because they just come in every shape and size. And it's like, I'm going to talk about a designated pass rusher, and the Browns just cut their designated pass rusher in Obo Okoronkwo, and I think they want Joe Tryon to be that guy. But like you'll get sub 250 guys, and you're like, that just doesn't work for half the NFL.
Yeah.
Like
no,
good,
100%. Because I mean the way that it's evolving, especially with what the Eagles did last year, is it's now turning into a bigger style edge as well as I mean you can have those bendy guys and that still works, but they're kind of moving away from them into where you need to be able to pressure with 4 to be able to play against the really good quarterbacks. And now you're looking at disguised coverages and where you should be able to show 3-4 and 4-3 in the same system to disguise coverages and rush. Don't know where that fourth is rushing, so you can pull the rest back. So it's interesting. Football's cyclical. We're in this awesome stage of defense and big men win championships, and that's football.
Dude, that's my favorite. Like, that's why I've always loved Wyatt Teller in Cleveland because like he's and Joel Bitonio too, but like especially when Wyatt Teller, like in 2020 when Bill Callahan and Kevin Stefanski came in with Wyatt Teller, I'll never forget a play in which he blocked 3 dudes on one.
Yeah.
so that Kareem Hunt could score a 3-yard touchdown. Wasn't even a ridiculous.
Right.
No, I do. In the evolution of the running games coming back, because
Right.
defense has evolved to try to counter all these pass attacks, and so that I think it's very important. So we're going to do some edge rushers today. For me, I don't have anybody ranked quite yet outside of quarterbacks, just because I'm just so early in this process and I'm very slow when it comes to summer scouting. So this isn't necessarily the top 3. That's just kind of a going rate. It's just some guys we've watched and some guys that we're interested in. So, man, I'll kick it over to you. Give me your first guy.
All right. Yeah, I don't really do any grading either. I do like a generalized top 50, top 100 sort of thing. But I'll start off with at the edge, R. Mason Thomas from Oklahoma. He's a senior, 6'2", 240 pounds. So in that talk, he is a little bit on that lighter side. Plays more than 3-4 at Oklahoma. The one thing that I do love about him, like pretty much who he is he might be the most explosive edge rusher that is coming into the 2025 season. His explosion is insane. He wins on speed. He shoots out of a cannon, and he just does not quit. It's 110% every single rep. Super fun to watch. I like to, when I'm looking at production, especially with edges and defensive tackles, I look and I combine tackles for losses, sacks, and QB hits. Basically, plays in the backfield that can disrupt drives. R. Mason Thomas has 13 tackles for loss, 9 sacks, and 10 QB hits last year, which averages to 2.5 plays per game in the backfield. That's potentially, disrupting 2 full drives and being able to get the ball back, which I think is super impressive by him. He's always in the backfield, high motor. He had a 3-sack game against Tulane, a 2-sack game against Auburn, and without a doubt, R. Mason Thomas's game against Auburn was probably my favorite moment watching summer scouting when it came to defensive players, because in that game there was 2 minutes left in the fourth quarter. Oklahoma was up 24-21 on Auburn, and it was 3rd down around the 50-yard line. R. Mason Thomas, it was, they had to go for it on 4th down no matter what for Auburn to make a comeback. R. Mason Thomas had a sack on 3rd down and then had a sack on 4th down for the turnover on downs and basically sealed the game himself. And that was an incredible, incredible moment. Hit the QB hard, whole 9 yards, did it well, and basically just closed the game out himself. And that's what stuck out to me the most about R. Mason Thomas, is already doing that as a junior. I love to see that. He can drop into coverage. He had, I believe, 50 dropbacks and coverages, only had 1 target, actually, or 3 targets, had stopped 2 of them. So he has that ability to drop back in coverage, so that outside linebacker role in a 3-4 can translate to the NFL. Being 240 pounds, he does need to maybe gain some strength and weight to help in defending the run. He can move laterally well on outside runs, but setting the edge is kind of difficult, and trying to stack and shed doesn't work the well. But his pass rush is good, but the issue is that he does not really come with a pass rush plan sometimes. Sometimes he's just so explosive that he hopes to win on speed and maybe bounce around like a ball, hoping to get to the quarterback, or he has too much tunnel vision on the quarterback where a tackle, if he can catch him, can just push him outside the pocket, leave a wide open lane for the quarterback to either scramble and gain yards or have more time to run. So he really needs to compress the pocket sometimes and be more of a team player on the front line instead of just kind of going after the quarterback. With the 240 pounds, 27% missed tackle rate. So we gotta learn to wrap it up if we're gonna stick at that 240 to 245 pounds as that edge rusher to at least be able to help more in the run game. But overall, I really like his game. Right now, I do have him in the top 50 for me, and typically when I grade, I don't use upside. I see what my eyes see and I'll grade. And then if I think he has upside, show it to me the next year. But R. Mason Thomas for me is a little bit of a different because he's so explosive and he gets to the quarterback in the backfield so often that I'm willing to bet him in the top 50 in my summer scouting. But he does have obviously some issues with his weight, defending the run, and him going past the pocket and just trying to get to the quarterback too often, that he could actually fall out of the top 100 if he does that. He also was battling in his first 2 years with an ankle injury, which had been a problem. He missed 7 games in his freshman and sophomore year total, but then he was fully healthy his junior year. So be healthy your senior year. Those all go away sort of thing. But right now I have a top 50 grade for him because he is a treat to watch and just explosive on all levels.
Yeah, and we talked about it, just like kind of briefly talked about it, but there is a place for those guys. Like
Right.
the even if he just is a designated pass rusher, like Nick Herbig's doing that right now with the Steelers.
Right.
Every team seems to at least have one. How much they use them and if they're effective, it's another story. But like I see him. I've watched just a little bit. I haven't really dug too much into him, but like I see him like that explosiveness, that explosive first step. I'm like, yeah, somebody can work with that. Like if that's all he
Absolutely.
brings to the table, like if he never gets stronger and he remains just kind of a so-so run blocker, if that's all he brings to the table, somebody's going to be able to figure out how to at least he's at least like a 5 or 6 sack guy in your rotation. I think
For
yeah.
100%. And then that's where his like positional value goes, right? Maybe go to 245, 248, gain some strength, help in the run. You're top 50. If you become a situational pass rusher, we're looking at, maybe end of 3, early 4.
Yeah. All right. So my first guy, I'm gonna go, and I'm gonna try this. We're gonna see how this goes. I have it brought up. We'll see if I can say it. Oregon's Mateo Uiagalelei. Uiagalelei.
Is that correct?
That's what it says.
Yeah. I
That is,
say ukulele, but I think you're probably right.
so the thing right here says it's a Samoan name, so the AG is pronounced UNG in
That makes
it.
sense.
So
Good to know.
I googled it before we started because I knew how this was gonna go if we didn't. But
That's
I'm just
very
gonna
respectful.
yeah, it's what I want to be. I'm gonna call him Mateo because I'm not gonna keep trying to say his last name. So like that's just where I'm gonna go. So nice build. I like. He's probably been my favorite edge I've watched so far. 6'5", 270 pounds. Last year for Oregon, had 308. I'm sorry, yeah, Oregon. Sometimes I forget. Today's world with all the transfers, I got to make sure. Like he was at Oregon last year, not this
Yeah.
year. Like I have it written down for one of the guys that I'm talking about because he was a transfer last year. So I'm like,
Right.
it's fun too when you're trying to go back. You've got your library of all 22 tape and you're trying to watch a guy and you're like, well, where's he at? He's not in the Oklahoma tape. It's like because he hasn't played for Oklahoma.
I I know. It is brutal in the transfer portal. I feel that so much.
So Mateo last year, 10.5 sacks, 18 hurries, 4 quarterback hits, 1 batted pass. I thought he is really interesting because they dropped him in the coverage sometimes, and at 270, and he wasn't bad. I was like, they didn't do it a ton, but like they dropped him back there, and it was like wasn't a total liability, which is something that just really kind of intrigued me about him. I think he can convert his speed to power pretty well. I think he's got a really good profile. I do believe he has a chance to be edge one. There's some things he needs to work on, and I'll get to that. But can win with both speed and power and convert between the two relatively well. Sometimes he's a little inconsistent with it, and that's something like we'll just kind of clean that up a little bit. I think he also has an explosive first step. I think that's where it starts when you're trying to convert speed to power. You got to threaten that you're going to get that outside shoulder and turn the corner, and he can do that. But he has a wicked bull rush, and that's his go-to. But he'll be like, "Oh, I'm going to go to the outside," a little ghost move, like I'm going to go to the outside. Nope, actually, I'm coming right in your chest, and I'm going right through you. They use him as an off-ball stand-up rusher. Not as an off-ball stand-up rusher, but a stand-up outside linebacker, but also with his hand in the dirt. I think he's got pretty good instincts. He sniffs out screens well, and like draw plays and stuff. Yeah. He doesn't always necessarily blow the play up, but you can tell they're running a draw. They're doing this. You can see I think he's got a nasty temperament. I think he wants to hurt you.
Which is what you need.
Yeah, especially if you're going to be 270. It's like if you're going to be one of the bigger defensive ends, you've got to be a nasty temperament. I don't think he has a ton of pass rush moves. That's where I'm at. Like he needs counters. I think he can get stonewalled a little bit too much. Where if he can't just zip past you or go through your chest, I think his counters aren't quite there. He's got a few moves. It's not a deep bag. Although I will say, if you've got two amazing moves, sometimes a deep pass rush move, a deep bag of pass rush moves is overrated if you can make it work. But that is an issue. He doesn't have a ton of counters. He's big, but I think he could be a little bit stronger in his base because I think like the big power tackles can move him in the run game a little too much. But I do think he can set the edge well. He isn't able to get off the block and make a play, but I still think he does a decent enough job to prevent people from bouncing outside. I just think he's got everything you need. Is good athlete, speed, power, all of that. Gets a little bit more consistent with kind of some counters and his ability to shed tackles in the run game. And you're going to be cooking with gas because he's got physical tools there. So Mateo, one more time. Let's do this. All right. Mateo Uiagalelei, the edge rusher out of Oregon.
Yeah, I think you pretty much nailed it on the head with it. And especially when it came to how many pass rush do you need? Because when you look at Mateo, I think you're right. I think the explosion on the first step is there, and his speed and converting speed to power is there for sure. And if you look like Jared Verse basically used like 65% of his pass rushes were speed to power, right? So I see the speed to power convert in Mateo I think if he masters some of the counters, like you said, I do agree. Because you're right, he tries to do a ghost move. He kind of does that like jump cross chop to get around the bend, and then he uses his bend to go sort of thing. And sometimes that doesn't work, but it does work. So if he developed like his pass rush plan in his head throughout the game to know when to use that and when to use the speed and power, and then just perfect his speed and power, I think he's in that realm where you're right, where it's an edge one, like perfect those things. And when we talked about, those pass rush moves before we started talking about players, my favorite thing about football is that it's a chess match. But if you're so good at one thing that people can't stop it, that's incredible, right? And yeah. Mateo's speed to power can do that, just like Jared. I'm not saying he'll be like Jared Verse, but you don't need to have a third or fourth if you can do that speed to power incredibly well. So just work on that and your counters, gain some strength, and I'm with you.
Yeah, because sometimes you hear that saying, jack of all trades, master of none. Sometimes you end up trying to do too much and then not being really, really good at one thing. But I remember these conversations about Jared Verse. Like, I really like it.
Right. Yeah.
That seems to be going pretty good in the NFL, doesn't it? Like,
100%. All right.
Number two.
Yeah. All right. Number two, I'm going to move to Michael Kamara from Indiana, 6'1", 265. Insane production. Last year was his first year there. He moved from James Madison to Indiana. Insane production, just moving over immediately, which I love to see. Referring back to plays. Oh yeah, referring back to the plays in the backfield, the tackles for loss, QB hits, and sacks. He totaled out right there 25, 43 total, which averages to over three plays in the backfield per game, which is insane. I really do think that's, basically stunting 2 drives, which is great to see. He has production everywhere. He had 9 games over 5 pressures. He had only 6 games without a sack and only 3 games where he didn't touch a QB throughout last year. He had a 3-sack game and a 2 QB hit game against Michigan State. That's a one-man show there. That is insane. I love to see that. He has a pass rush bag on all different levels at 265. So he has about 3 or 4 moves, which I do love to see. When he's standing up or even has his hand down in the dirt, he has that finger twitch that I love to see out of edges where he's, moving your fingers, just ready to like Jones for a sack or a QB hit. I always love to see that twitch. At 6'1", he is a little bit shorter, a little bit of a tweener, but that 6'1" helps his bull rush and lower body leverage. He has that explosive first step, and then he can push back on that lower leverage and get those tackles to move. He's got good hand fighting techniques and initial punch to run into a second pass rush. I really love to see that, and I'm excited to see how that grows into next year. He has a really good swim move and a really good rip to get around the outside, and he has inside moves as well. Michael Kamara had probably my favorite sack of summer scouting on the defensive side. From him, it was versus Maryland. He was lined up at the 5, and the tackle and the guard were just staring at him like, an inch away from each other, being like, okay, what are you going to do sort of thing. And he made his first initial step inside, and the guard's job was to just chip him. Just basically chip him, then help the inside. made his move inside, and the guard looked for it, but then he quickly went outside. The guard didn't touch him. He pulled a swim move around the tackle. Basically, the tackle didn't touch him. And then Billy Edwards was sitting in the pocket, saw Mikal coming, and he just fell down. Like, it wasn't a tackle. It wasn't a tackle. He just, like, hugged him for a second. Was like, it's over, right? And you know, the quarterback, Billy Edwards, was like, yeah, it's over. My favorite sack by that. It was just impressive to defeat two guys without basically being touched. I love to see that. His speed to power is decent, but being that little bit of a tweener, I think he can improve on that. And he's got good body control, which I love on the inside. So his explosive first step on the inside, if it's a short gap in between the center and the guard, he can kind of body control himself into it and then just push through once he gets like to their back half and then kind of use his power to get through. And I really love that about him to get into that production. He's a great contributor in the run game. He needs to set the edge a little bit better and get a little bit tackle. He has a 23% missed tackle rate, which obviously, you know, that grows into it. Missed tackle rates for me are kind of hit and miss because I do believe when you get into an NFL training room, your strength increases and every single NFL team is like, listen, you got to tackle. Like, it's got to happen sort of thing. So I believe that's one thing where a missed tackle rate can be improved over time and in the NFL. One semi knock and one big knock is he does need production to get him going. Like, I feel like he needs a tackle for loss or a good rep at defending the run to get going, to get hot, and then his confidence increases. Like the Maryland game, most of his production was in the second half. First half wasn't much. He got kind of wiped away in the pass rush game. But once he gets going, then he's kind of good to go. And then a little bit of the second knock that is concerning, which I hope does not come into this year, is injuries. He missed the entire 2021 season with an injury. I believe it was an ankle injury. And then 2022, he had 2 torn labrums and a high ankle sprain that left him out most of 2022. He was healthy in 2024, missed a little bit of 2023. So if he stayed fully healthy in 2024, fully healthy in 2025, just like our Mason Thomas, then those turn into, you know, white flags, not even yellow flags sort of thing. But there was a bulk of injuries in Michael's collegiate career, so a little concerned about that. But if he can stay healthy right now, he is in my top 50, and I think he's going to stay in the top 50 unless injuries happen. He's just got an all-around package, pass rush plan, good at defending the run. He's a dog.
Yeah, no, I like him a lot too. He was actually one guy that I considered on my write-up that I was doing, writing about him, because I liked him a lot last year, and I thought he might come out last year.
Yeah.
Like, I was like, yeah, I can see a day 2 guy that like you feel really good about in this situation. And then of course he goes back. Him and the guy I'm about to talk to are 2 guys that I'm going to watch very, very closely to see what kind of steps they can take forward, because I thought they might be able to go to the NFL last year. Just that were guys that I scouted last year. So if I think you're NFL ready one year and you go even better, well, then we're talking. So yeah, he's definitely going to watch him very closely. My second guy is LT Overton from Alabama. Now here's a guy that doesn't have the production in terms of sacks. PFF has him at 3 because they don't do half sacks. I think he actually had 2 or 2.5 is what he ended up with. He did have 32 quarterback hurries, 4 hits, and 1 batted pass. So like it similar, not player. He's not the same player, but kind of similar to Shamar Stewart in a sense that the sack production's not there, but there was pressures. There was good play against the run. There was good play, but he wasn't able to really seal the deal. The Browns had an issue with this last year. They were like, they were 3rd or 4th in pressure rate with just 4 players. They were right up there with Denver. But they were 14th in sacks. So it was like, yeah, they were starting it, but they couldn't seal the deal. And that was causing some of the issues that the Browns defense had last year. And you see some of that stuff with LT Overton, where I would like to see him just be able to actually finish the rep, go from just being a pressure and that sort of thing. He's very interesting. 6'5", like 290, 285, I think is what they list him as, but he might be 290. Yeah. He's a tweener as well, but different type of tweener, where we're talking about not linebacker versus edge. We're talking about defensive end versus defensive tackle. And 100%. This is what my notes verbatim say. unique build and skill set. He moves like a pass rusher, but he has the size of a defensive tackle. And
Well said.
I'm like, this guy, like, I don't think you should have the agility and moves to, he changes direction like he's like 270. I'm like,
Yeah.
what are we doing here? And I think maybe some of the size, if he maybe leans up a little bit, that might help him seal the deal, make him a little bit more explosive, make him get to the pass rush or get to the quarterback a little quicker. That might be it. But like overall, I think he's a great athlete. So he's got it in there. Another guy, high motor, high effort. Love that. Love that out of him. Reminds me a little bit of the way the Browns have used Alex Wright, but Alex Wright's 270.
Yeah.
Still, he's even bigger than that, like, which is crazy to me. He's a powerful player, sets the edge against the run really well, as you would expect a dude that's nearly 290 pounds. Another guy where I think he's really vulnerable to if you can stop his first pass rush move, he doesn't have many counters. He's using a lot of natural talent to rush the passer. And I think that's where you're also seeing it come up where there's pressures there, but there's not sacks. It's because he can't shed blocks sometimes. He'll let him get up into his chest, and yeah, he'll keep pushing him, but he can't get off of it to seal the deal. So he's got to find a way, not necessarily just to have more pass rush counters, but just to get off blocks. He's got to work on shedding blocks. There's some hand techniques and some things he can do there. And I think part of it is that he has an inconsistent pad level.
Yep.
And 6'5", 290. It's probably not super easy to keep your knees bent and down in your stance and not go straight up. So I'm not saying that. I'm saying I totally understand the inconsistent pad level, but I think if he can work on some of those things, he can play with a little bit better leverage. He could potentially get off blocks just a little bit better. I'm really curious to see if he can get production this year, because the stats just don't warrant, like, if you are looking at his box score, you are not going to think he's as talented as I think he is. Like, you're going to be like, 2 sacks, 2.5 sacks, whatever the official number is. It's less than 3. And you're going to be like, he's got like 40 some pressures, but like, it's not an absurd number like 70. It's a good number, but it's not absurd. And so you're just kind of like, there's some consistency issues. He's got to be able to finish plays and get off the block. But when you watch his tape, you're like, you should not move like that. You should not be that big and move like that. You should not be able to go inside and win because you're so incredibly explosive that a guard isn't used to seeing a guy of your size do that he's like, oh shit, what the hell was that? Like, where did he go? But he can do those sorts of things.
Yep. Yeah, I love LT Overton too. I'm a big fan of him. I think his production will come in. And when you bring up Shamar Stewart, I agree with that. He was the case that I was watching that was like, okay, well, production definitely does not match the traits, kind of just like Shamar. But the good thing is that LT Overton is in Alabama versus Shamar Stewart being in Texas A&M, where Texas A&M makes their front line do a lot more mundane things instead of being able to show what they're actually made of. So being in Alabama would help. I do believe, like, when I was watching, I was like, I think the production will increase in his final year for sure, and that will come. I agree. The shedding's kind of it. Get your bull rush down. You have a good bull rush, but keep the feet moving and just don't stop. Like, keep that motor, keep the feet moving, and get that through. I agree. As long as he plays like how he is and his production comes up, I think he plays better in a 3-4 defensive end style. Yeah. So get him onto a team, like hopefully a team that will draft him that will use him in a defensive end mode instead of more of an edge rusher, and then that's where he'll be more productive. But I agree. I mean, you hit everything on the head. I agree. I like LT Overton for sure. He's in my top 10 edges.
All right, man. Let's hear your final guy.
All right. Yes. All right. My final guy is the guy which you talked about, Mateo potentially taking the number 1. Right now, I believe that Keldrick Falk from Auburn definitely has a chance to take the number 1 edge spot for sure. I love his game. He's only a junior, 6'6", 280 pounds. He has a path to be edge number 1. He has crazy moves. He has 45 tackles, 29 solos, 11 tackles for loss, 45 pressures, 8 sacks, 5 QB hits. He's got a forced fumble. He's got 5 games over 5 pressures. He's got 3 2-sack games. He's very good in defending the run. So his defending of what I love about Keldrick Falk is his pass rush and defending the run is pretty equal, so it does not fall off. You do not know if he's rushing the passer or setting the edge. He can do both very, very well. He's got good upper body strength and grip strength to stack and shed. He does that very well on the outside and the inside. He is very good at locking onto an offensive tackle and manipulating the offensive tackle quickly to do a peek before he sheds. Love that. Like NFL ready, really fun to watch. He's super versatile in his 6'6", 280 pounds. His production comes from all games, just not weaker competition. At defensive at edge or defensive end, he lined up over the center all the way past to 5-eye throughout that whole entire game. He recorded a 2-sack and 7-tackle game against Cal last year, all lined up on edge. And then he recorded a 2-sack and 5-tackle game against Georgia, where 20% of his snaps were lined up in the A and B gap. So he's versatile and productive on all facets on that line. His first step is not insanely explosive, but explosive enough where he can win with speed and part of his pass rush. But he's got a great speed to power convert, and he's got a spin move that looks pretty good too. And he uses that spin move well with his body control. I believe it was the Georgia game, his second sack. He came straight up from the center, used a crevice to get through, and he noticed that he was getting pushed back behind the quarterback, had the body control to stop, counter with a spin move, and went right into Carson Beck. Super impressive second sack. I love to see that with his body control and what he was able to do there. A little bit of the knocks. Sometimes his hand placement is not ideal when setting the edge or defending the run, which tackles take over and then he can get washed away. There was a couple games that I watched where, like, for a full quarter, he was kind of stagnant, which is what it is in the college game. But it was, full quarters where you're like, okay, where'd you go, sort of thing. Basically, that's kind of my only knock on him at the moment. He needs to fine-tune his pass rush moves and make a plan throughout the game when it comes to the NFL. Make sure you're doing the right pass rush moves at the right time, setting up pass rush moves later in the game. Hit a spin move in the first. If it worked, wait till the third, sort of thing. And that's where he can be that edge one. And I'm being super critical of what he needs to work on because I'm kind of really just talking about how he could overtake basically Reuben Bain Jr. or TJ Parker, right? If you're looking at those are probably the top two that everybody is talking about. I believe Keldrick Falk can jump them without a doubt if he just really fine-tunes his game and gets into that mode. I love Keldrick Falk. I cannot wait for this year to watch him.
Yeah, I have not gotten to him yet. I confess that I have not, but he will be I'm doing some safety work right now, and when I circle back, I will definitely get to that because I'm very intrigued by the biggest knock being he disappears sometime. I love those guys. I'm like, oh, sometimes he just doesn't produce. Like everybody does that. Like everybody does that. So if that's my biggest knock, then I'm like, yeah, get him on my football team. Like
for sure. Yeah.
So my final guy, I got a designated pass rusher here, Trey Moore from Texas. 6'3", 245 pounds, what he's listed as. He transferred to Texas last year. Was previously at UTSA for a couple of years. He had 14 sacks for UTSA in 2023. There was a dip. One of the bigger concerns for me and why I'm very eager to see what happens this year, there was a pretty big dip in production when he took that step up in competition. UTSA, his final year, has 14 sacks. He comes to Texas last year. He gets 5.5 sacks and 36 total pressures. So it wasn't terrible by any stretch of the imagination, but, you were down, 8.5 sacks when you took a step up in level competition. Now, can you now even it out now that you're used to it now and you're like, okay, I understand the differences between the two levels of competition. That's what I'm really watching this year because I think he's a phenomenal athlete. Another guy with a quick first step off the line of scrimmage, he wins mostly with speed, and that's kind of what you see with guys at 245 pounds, the sub 250 guys. Mm-hmm. I think he's a very fluid mover. I think he effortlessly can switch and change directions, and which I'm curious if he adds just a little bit of size, a little bit of strength, what he could do in the run game. because he can chase guys down from the backside because he has that speed and athletic ability. So I'm really curious to see kind of as time goes on and see if he can develop a little bit more as a run defender, because right now there's not much there. He did have 3 straight seasons with at least 36 total pressures with the couple of years at UTSA. So he's been productive, consistent in a sense. I do think he actually has a couple of different pass rush moves. One of the guys that I think but it starts mostly with different types of speed moves. I think he's got a good amount of bend to him, so he can fire off the outside, got a little bit of bend there. He'll kind of, I love it. It's funny because you just talked about it. Sometimes he does set people up to where he fires off the outside a bunch and then he just shoots the inside gap. And you're like,
I love that.
What the hell? Like
Yeah.
he just, and it's like, it's exactly what you talked about. It's, I do that on Madden or NCAA and stuff. It's like, I run this one play a bunch of times where I, motion the running back. There's 2 running backs. I motion one behind me and he goes out like this and it's just a run play. And then you get so used to it and then just throw it out to him and nobody's out there covering him because I ran it 6 times and I never threw it. And you're like, oh, he does that. His change of direction, like spin move, kind of a little bit of a swim in there, like but it's all based around speed and athletic ability. He lacks the size and power to be a consistent run defender, but I do think he does a good job chasing down from the backside. If he could just find more ways to be a little bit more impactful in the run game, and maybe a little bit more, like if he was at like 252, 255 and didn't lose too much of the explosion, I think he could be a 3-down player. But right now he's a designated pass rusher. I got to see if that production can return to the UTSA days. But there's stuff there with Trey Moore in Texas, especially if you're just looking for a designated pass rusher, which is what I probably think he ultimately is. But again, we've said it several times today, like there's a place for that.
Oh, 100%. And I haven't watched much Trey Moore, so I got a question. Does he, so in that small body, is he more like a Mike Green kind of setup, or is he more like a Josiah Stewart setup? Because like if he has that motor, like Josiah Stewart was wildly good at defending the run for 248. Can Trey Moore get into that, being able to defend the run like Josiah Stewart, even keeping that 250 build?
I think his length and frame could hold it. Yes.
Yeah.
I do think, and that's what part of where the hope I have is I think that he can do that. It's not where he is right now, obviously, but like,
for sure.
I do see a guy, because sometimes you look at a guy and you're like, well, you're rocked up already.
Yeah, 100%, right? You're full. You're full, dog.
Where are we putting this at? Like, I don't think that's him. So yes, I do think he could be a Josiah Stewart kind of guy.
Nice.
But like worst comes to worst, and he's just a designated pass rush, you take him on day 3 and you're happy with that.
For sure.
Well, Randall, man, I appreciate you so much for joining me on this episode. Real quick, before we get out of here, tell everybody where they can find all your stuff.
All right, yeah, at Randall Slifer is where you can find me on Twitter or Blue Sky. I try and interact with everybody on that website to talk football. I'll talk football all day. I do podcasting with the Draft Professors group of 70 of us, which we're doing all our summer scouting with Jacob and everybody, which we love. We're a whole community, and we love it. We're summer scouting's getting into full swing, and we do podcasts every day, 2 a day, once we get into the fall and the season starts. And then I also do writing for NFL and college sports for Team MBS Media. And I'm also part of their podcasting with the NFL Draft Central with a group of great guys as well. And that is where you can find me. And I really appreciate you having me on today, Jacob.
Yeah, man, it's a lot of fun. I always love doing this. Is my first year really doing summer scouting podcast and really doing it. So like I'm having so much fun doing this. It's a lot of fun, guys. Appreciate y'all for checking us out. Please make sure you stay locked into the OBR, subscribe, hit that like button, give us that bell. This is Wednesday night, so tomorrow Jeff Lloyd, Browns 3D at 6 p.m. and then All Eyes on Cleveland with Brad Ward and Casey Kinnaman at 7 p.m. Appreciate you guys. We will see you guys again next time.